So,
isn't that cool? I mean, I was backstage the whole time, so I got the backstage version of that. But Maria is absolutely amazing, and
she's awesome.
She's been great to work with.
She's taught us a lot, and she continues to teach a lot of people. But we want to kind of talk about, and Maria talked about this in her conversation with us. Why education? You know, why education? So we know that it's an issue. We've established that, right? We all agree that it's a problem. But why are we approaching this on the educational level? Why do parents need to talk about this on the educational level? Well,
story time.
Story time.
Story time.
Let me tell you a little story, if you're not already sick of these. But when I got married about 2 years ago, so I'm fairly new to the whole marriage scene. But before I got married, Cam and I were living together, so he can
roommates.
He can testify to this, I guess. But we were roommates. I ate horribly. Horribly. I was a fast food junkie.
Every day, 10 times a day.
No,
I'm kidding. I'm
kidding. I probably at least ate out to fast food once a day. Most likely more times, like twice. All the time. Now, this is not a conversation of whether fast food is good or bad, but we can all agree probably that fast food doesn't necessarily have the most healthy food. At least the menu items that I purchased were definitely not the most healthy. And it was kind of destructive, to be honest. And people talk to me, they're like, dude, you might want to rethink that choice. And I was super apathetic to this. I was super apathetic to any conversation that dealt with like eating healthy or counting calories or anything of that nature, because I was just like, look, my goal was fill a bucket, my stomach. And if it was full...
I like how he says his stomach is a bucket. Maybe you feel the same way.
It wasn't about filling it with the right stuff, 10% this, 10% that. It was just fill the bucket. And if it was full, I accomplished what I needed to do. And I accomplished it with the easy way out. My point is, it wasn't very good for me when I got married. My wife, she's amazing. And she was quite the opposite. She hadn't eaten fast food in I don't know how many years. When I was like, let's go get some food, and I started driving there, she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, what? It's food. That didn't qualify for food for her. Anyway, my point is that she slowly started to educate me on the negative effects of eating unhealthily. She started, through documentary films, literature, we started talking about this, and I started to slowly understand the long-term consequences of my actions, or the potential harm, because I wasn't feeling necessarily an immediate destruction, but rather the long-term consequences of eating the way I was. And she started to educate me, and pretty soon, this is the cool part of the story, this is why we're telling it, pretty soon I made and continued to make my own decision to avoid that food, and I started to drive past those institutions and have no desire to eat there because of what I now understood and how that could affect me long term. Had laws been passed, or had a kind of a rule been passed banning all fast foods at that time, at the state of mind that I was in before I met my wife, I would have been on the front line picketing, saying, how dare you take away my opportunity and my right to eat that hamburger. But slowly, do you see what we're going at? Do you see the power of education? Now we're not saying that restrictions and certain laws shouldn't be in place. By no means. Those should be in place, and people that are fighting on that front should continue to fight on that front. But what we're saying is, can we start to understand the importance and the value of individual choice?
Well, individual choice and education.
Yeah.
You look at Maria's story, you look at the story you just told. Education matters big time. In fact, when you look back at the whole tobacco time,
with the Truth Campaign.
The Truth Campaign. Many of you are probably familiar with the Truth Campaign. They came out and basically educated on the truth about tobacco.
Now, what that did was, tobacco always existed, and guess what? It still exists today. But the amount of youth smoking today has drastically decreased thanks to education. And those that are smoking are doing it knowingly. See, that's the problem with pornography and not addressing it in the youth, is that youth start to engage in this blindfolded. They think, just like Maria did, what's the big deal?
What's the harm?
It's just an image. It's just a video. What's the big deal? What's the harm? It's not doing anything to anybody. What they're not seeing is the long-term consequences. So why education? That's why education. And we've got some tips, because you can understand, have we beaten the dead horse enough? And we
tend to do that.
Yeah. Have we expressed enough why it's so important to educate youth on this topic? Again, I'll go back to it. Swallow the pill. You've got to talk to your kids. But Maria said, but they may not know how. Okay, that's valid.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about that. We've got, for you,
our 4 tips.
4 tips on how to address your youth on this
And again, this
issue.
is coming from young people. This is based on our experience. Going out,
our
doing assemblies,
and
conversations, emails.
This is what they said.
Everything.
So this is kind of like, picture us, your kids saying, Mom, Dad, I wish you knew this. I wish you would come. You're here and I'm here. I wish you'd come here so that I could meet you halfway at least. So number one tip. And guess what? We did a poll with all of our fighters. And again, at the beginning we said, we're fighters. Fighters are individuals who join our organization and kind of pledge to fight the new drug. And so we asked our fighters, what's the number one thing that you think is most important in addressing this issue with having your parents address this issue? They said, be open. Be open. Be open about the topic. Be open about it. The reason why the biggest reason why youth are not open about this issue is because you're not open with them about this issue.
Go back to the emails. I mean, how many emails did we see where they said, I tried to talk to my parents, or I won't talk to my parents. I'm completely afraid.
We did a survey with some students when we did an assembly, and the majority of individuals say, no way. Mm-hmm. We're not no way can we talk to our parents about this. Why? Because you're not open with them. You got to be open with them. You've got to be open with them often. You've got to talk about this.
Which is kind of a hard thing to swallow, because, I mean, again, going back to the way you grew up, it wasn't something that you were used to. It can be an uncomfortable, sensitive topic. And so to suddenly live in this day, the day that your kids live in, and have to now kind of make that cultural shift, that's a difficult thing. But we can't not recognize it for what it is anymore. We have to do something about it, and it starts with open dialogue, with opening up and having that level of trust and openness so that they are willing to share with you what's going on, and you're willing to share with them. It's a two-way...
It's an open door policy.
It's an open door policy, we call it. Two-way communication. If you want them to talk to you, you need to be open to them about them. If you want them to listen to you, you've got to listen to them as well. I mean, pretty fundamental stuff here. Again, we're not parents here, but we do know
this is
from
what
the youth
they
that
want
they're
you to
saying
know.
that it's not happening, and so...
Number 2, it's not enough to just be open. You got to be non-judgmental. Again, going back to you got that?
Sorry, was that a little close?
Again, going back to the emails, it's not enough. The emails kind of talked about, I tried to open with my parents, and they exploded. They just said, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah,
and this
the
and
one
that.
said you have to be ashamed of yourself.
Which, guys, your kids are going to be ashamed off the bat. They're ashamed. They feel guilty. You've got to be able to separate the action or the addiction from the individual. Separate them.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not doing that.
In fact, Fight the New Drug, if you go to our website, we did a story on a guy named Seth. And that was one of his, I guess you could say, his biggest moments, biggest learning moments for him when he was in the thick of the addiction. He said that once he learned, he said the most freeing moment is when he learned that he had to separate the addiction from the person, and that the addiction wasn't who he was. The parents need to understand that as well. If you guys understand that for your kids, you're going to be able to be there to help.
Rather than addressing them as the addict, bring them onto your side and address the addiction together. Okay? And the thing is, with addressing this on a non-judgmental level, it's kind of understandable knowing where we came from, like Cam was saying, knowing where we came from, where this was a disgusting thing. That's kind of the mindset. It's like, hey, don't do it.
And
Stop.
now it isn't, No, I'm kidding. Joke.
Well, our mindset back in the day was like, just stop. Don't do it. It was a behavior that was thought of as very controllable. And it is controllable until it hits the realm of addiction. Once it's in the realm of addiction, it's just like any other drug. It's like cocaine or heroin or meth or alcohol or cigarettes. The advice, just stop, kind of isn't enough.
Why can't they just quit? Why can't you just stop what you're doing?
If you as parents can grasp that this is an actual addiction, which all of you listening here, I think, do grasp that, but treat it like that. Treat it like it's an addiction. Because if you do, when your kid comes up to you and says, so I got this issue, I got this problem, you're not just going to go, you ought to be ashamed of yourself, you better quit that right away. Go up to yourself. You have a southern accent all of a sudden, I don't know.
For some reason.
Anyway, my point is if you can see that and say, oh, son, or oh, daughter, let's deal with this, let's address this in a non-judgmental way. Again, last thing I'll harp on with the non-judgmental, everything from what we've said, is if you want this to be an open door policy, if you want them to be coming back to you, remove judgment. Just as the email said, if they come to you, if they gain that courage, which is very courageous on their part, if you haven't already opened the door by being open, to come to you, and you shut them down with shame and guilt and all that, are they going to come back? Oh, no way. No way. Love them, and they'll come back.
And this is kind of a side note, but a lot of the times we also find the reason parents aren't talking to their kids is because one of the spouses has an issue with it as well. And so it's also not about judging them. It's not judging yourself. So many spouses are afraid to bring it out in the open because they're afraid of what it's going to do. Well, better sooner than later, because when the addiction goes full blown, there's a chance you can't recover. Well, recover the consequences of what it could do to your family. So equally as important, don't judge yourself. Do something about it for the whole family's sake.
Number 3 of our 4 tips. Number 3, and my personal favorite, is science and family values. Or what do we have?
Family
values with science. Now this is important because everybody has family values, right? Everyone watching this has a set of values. Faith, belief, whatever you want to call it, you have a set of a standard that you live up to as an individual and as a family. And those vary from individual to individual. Those change, those alter.
And they're very important.
Those are very important, but they're not blanketed and applied to everybody. So, and what you're dealing with, so bring those family values, take them, but implement science as well.
And this is why, and you guys know this way better than we do, we just know from personal experience, the teenage brain is an issue in and of itself.
Yeah, well, that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with the teenage brain. As a parent, you have this fully undeveloped brain and understanding of what your values are and what actions are going to comply with those values. But a teenager's brain is still under development. The amygdala, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for instinct and kind of passion and whatnot, that's the first thing to develop. But the frontal cortex of the brain, which is right here in front of the brain, thanks Cam for the visual, that develops through the teen years and into adulthood, and that's responsible for logically thinking through and reasoning and logically thinking through scenarios, and it's kind of responsible
consequences,
it's responsible for the actions. Now, it's no wonder that youth or a teenager would rely less on that area of the brain, because it's not fully developed, to kind of make those moral decisions or kind of have that foundation. So basically, they're still figuring themselves out. What we're trying to say is they're still trying to figure themselves out.
And how often do you hear this? Why? And a lot of
Don't
times,
do that.
I know for my parents at least, I remember when I was a kid, my parents would either, my dad would either say, because I said so, I'm the dad. Of course when you're a kid, you can't do anything about that. However, it's still an important thing for them to understand why. And what's so cool about the time, this day and age versus 30 years ago, 40 years ago, is that now it goes beyond just our values and saying that it's morally wrong. There's science and research that backs it up. That's huge. And when you incorporate the science and research with whatever set of family beliefs or values you have, That's the most powerful combination.
For sure. And that's what's going to resonate with youth more so. And we've seen this. As we go out and we educate, we have fighters, again, from all different religious beliefs, all different values or set of standards, all different political views. It doesn't matter because we're coming together on a single solitary language, which is science, facts, and personal accounts. And people can resonate with that. So bring that to your youth in conjunction with your family values, and you'll see a difference. You'll see a difference in the way that they respond. Again, we do a great job in our society with on this front with drugs.
Yeah, addictions to other substances.
You don't just say, don't do cocaine because I said so. You say, don't do cocaine. Dude, it messes you up. Check out what it does. It does X, Y, and Z. Okay, that's good. Take that same principle and apply it to pornography, because we're not doing that right now, and that could really help with these teens. Fourth and final thing, respect.
R-E-S-P-E-C-T. I'm just kidding.
Stop that.
I'll stop.
No, respect. Okay, so what we're trying to say here is that in the end, a parent can do only so much. A parent can be open about the topic. A parent can be non-judgmental and have an open door policy. A parent can teach family values the best of their ability and bring science into the equation. And still, in the end, guess what? It's up to them.
They're their own person. They're their own individual.
If you're going to have restrictions in your home, they'll find ways around it if it's a true desire of theirs to find it. And when they turn 18, they're their own human being. They're going to make their own decisions. Our point to this is, when all is said and done, when you've finished everything and you've done all you can, still love them. Still respect their choice. And keep that line in the water, because that's the last thing you have. And if you take out that line, which is love, if you take out that line, you may have lost them.
Yeah.
So keep it in there. Love them, respect them. Those four things: be open, be non-judgmental,
science and family values. Let's try to say it together.
And respect. Well, you know, and we want to make sure that you guys understand that Fight the New Drug as an organization, we are supplemental to what you guys are doing in the home. Our organization approaches this on a peer-to-peer level. We help youth understand this issue using science and whatnot and all that. However, it starts in the home. Okay? We need you guys.
It's a collective effort, honestly. I mean, just the whole issue, the whole movement itself, everything that, whether it be porn harms or anyone that's in this whole movement, you're all critically important and play a huge role. And that's how we feel about our side of it. The youth side is very important as well. And so do what you can. Do all that you can for your kids on this issue, because it's not going away. We're not going to make it go away.
No, this isn't going away. Sadly, it's not going away. No matter what we do, it's never going to go away. We've got to give ourselves the necessary tools and give our youth, more importantly, the necessary tools to combat this. So we invite all of you guys to go to fightthenewdrug.org and learn more. And as we said, our website is geared for youth. So take your youth there. Bring them there. Get them to become fighters. Because oftentimes, youth will listen to a peer more than they will the parent, sadly. And that's why we're supplemental. We kind of help each other. Because sometimes youth are just not going to listen to a parent, in which case we're here to help on that front. Okay? And so take them to the website, become a fighter. And you can also find us on Facebook, as we said, at facebook.com/fightthenewdrug. I think